Good evening. I'm happy you've all come tonight for us to be together. Never underestimate the power of the San Diego Union. Each night when I do this, I ask myself, what am I doing here? I mean, who am I supposed to be? What is this? This is all absurd. You're sitting. God is good. Oh boy. But I don't really take this role very seriously. I play it well. But behind it all, here I am. And behind you as audience and listener, here you are, and here we are together. And we're playing out a ritual, a certain kind of a dance of I'm holding the talking stick. And it's an old ritual. And when I hold a talking stick, my job is to speak whatever it is that is closest to our collective truth as I can find. But I realize, of course, that what truth I can find is distorted by who I still think I am. So you have to trust your own intuitive heart. Because some of the things I say may be completely off the wall. They may not be wise at all. They might just show a certain kind of attached mind or a certain kind of neurosis, and I probably wouldn't even know. It's not like I'm trying to put anything over on you. I mean, we don't know where we're still stuck most of the time if we're really stuck. If we see we're stuck, we're already beginning to get out of it. So I've got to caution you not to trust me. You can like me, you can find me charming and interesting, but trust only your own heart. Because I am not a guru, I'm not an enlightened being. I am somebody on a path, just like I assume you are, or you probably wouldn't be here tonight. Can you all hear me all right? How nice. Is it all right without the lights? Okay. I have a shadow across my face. I see. Do I still have a shadow across my face? Yeah, it's this, isn't it? It's on my chin, huh? Any shadow now? Okay. The shadow knows. Oh. I've been realizing that I'm caught in a peculiar predicament. You ever see those Wild West movies where lightning strikes or something and the entire herd is stampeded and they're all running towards the cliff? Well, I turn out to be one of those cattle. I realize that I am part of a conceptual reality about how things are. That is deeply ingrained in the culture I live in and is dysfunctional. I mean, if the herd keeps running, they go over the cliff. You and I are part of a culture that has myths about individuality, about competition, about success. We have definitions of humans as somehow having the license and right to use resources freely around them. If you read the front pages of the papers, the economic reality, it suggests that any problem that we meet in the foreseeable future will be solved by technology. And enough money and enough technology, and we will all ultimately live happily ever after. And yet that is dysfunctional. It's not true. You and I are part of social structures that we keep saying, isn't it wonderful we have a democracy? But because of the looseness of that democracy, which is perhaps important to a democracy, we have incredible amounts of oppression and discrimination and lack of honoring of one another. And the structures are used in order to protect the ones that have against the ones that have not. Not only in this society, in this country, but in the world. But while we took this conceptual model, we brought it with us, primarily from Europe. We came to a country where the people that lived here did not have that conceptual reality. They lived in a different relationship to the things around them. They lived with respect, with listening, with honoring, with they didn't experience themselves as somebody who wanted to possess and control and master the universe. They felt that they were a part of the universe. That they were part of the systems, spiritual systems, food chain systems, earth systems, sun, moon, star systems. But we came with a kind of a mechanistic, urban, industrial, objective, behaviorist, scientific mode of seeing reality. And it fit in with our need for power, our need to control and master the things around us. the instrument we have for controlling and mastering is our intellect. It's our prefrontal lobes. It's our analytic intellective process. But the problem with our thinking mind is it thinks about things. Every thought is an object. Like I was a behaviorist as a social scientist, and I thought about myself as an object. Humans were really seen by me in my pure social science role as a set of ambulatory variables. Including myself, as I say, and so I experienced ultimately something that has pervaded the culture, which we see as just part of the landscape now. Specifically, I'm talking about the sense of alienation or separateness of the individual. I mean, most of us still, some of us still may live in it. Most of us lived in it a generation or two ago, or our grandparents lived in it. They lived in either village or community or extended family reality. So they lived among generations. And they didn't have to figure out how to be compassionate because the situation just elicited caring for one another. Because it was part of your role, your identity. But at least for me, I got a sense that individuality meant that I was free to want what I wanted, and I could create a reality I chose. So I listened, what did I desire? And I desired more freedom and flexibility, and the family demanded a lot of me and limited my freedom, and so I wanted to, and I did for many years, I just walked away. And I said, well, we're all part of the larger human family. But the result was that although I was free in an external sense, I realized over time that I was no more free in an internal sense than I had been before. But I was part of a culture that said, well, we'll put the older generation there, and the dying there, and we'll put the have-nots there, because they are kind of losers. They didn't win at this game. And we'll hang out with people of our own generation. So interestingly enough, in this zeal for freedom and individuality, we often cut ourselves off from the very wisdom of our culture that could have warned us that maybe the game we were playing with such zeal was like cattle running towards the cliff. I mean, you and I are facing, like in the last 10 years, the amount of desertification, the things that have turned into deserts in the world, equals all the land China has under cultivation. The amount of topsoil that's been lost, all the land that India has under cultivation. Almost half of our groundwater is no longer drinkable. We have gotten rid of the forest, the rainforests, which protect our ecosystem. Past 10 years, all the land east of the Mississippi, that amount of land has been deforested. The fish, seafood becomes slowly unedible. The air becomes unbreathable. And yet we perpetuate a sense that we're winning. Doesn't that seem strange? Is this too weird, by the way? I mean, do you want me to lighten up, or tell me, because I'm enjoying it, but I don't want to take you all on a trip that, you know. Are we okay thus far? Yes. Okay. Tell me if we're not. I mean, if you're really feeling pain, let me know. What'd you say? Sleepy. You're feeling sleepy? Well, just lean against the person next to you. It's perfectly okay. Just treat it like a dream that it is anyway. You're actually asleep and you're just dreaming that you're sleepy. You know, in the next 30 years, the world population is going to double. 9 billion or close to 10 billion people. Isn't that going to be fun? I was talking to John Seed, who's a very beautiful deep ecologist from Australia. And he was telling me how it would probably take, at this point, a miracle to turn the game around. Everybody's so vested in it. We're marketing it so fast to everybody. You take small countries that were self-sufficient and then you bring in a one-crop economy that they export in order to be part of the world market. And pretty soon they have to import their food, and the whole thing, they're completely out of balance. In the zeal to move into the technological pleasure promises of Dallas and Dynasty. Well, these son of a bitches are us. That's the predicament. See, that's what I started out by saying. I said, I'm in a hell of a predicament because I find myself one of the herd that is rushing towards the cliff. And I'm saying, could I change? What would it take to turn my life around? How can I be living so unmindfully or so with such dissonance with what I know to be true? So when I said to John Seed, John, you know, it's all going to take a miracle, and you see what's using it and how we're using petrochemicals and all. Didn't you just fly here from Australia for this interview? I mean, how can you justify that? I said, that's my problem. I said, when I drive around in my car, I think, how can I do this? Yet I do it. And he said, well, he said, in those Western movies where the cattle are rushing towards the cliff, he said, and the cowboys wake and realize that the cattle are stampeding, the cowboys don't run in the opposite direction. They run after the cattle, and they run faster than the cattle to turn the cattle. In other words, I'm using these resources in order to tell people to stop using these resources. Now, when you look at the psychodynamics of our culture, when you look at the ecology of our culture, when you look at the economics of our culture, and you are mindful, that is, you're aware of your predicament. Mindfulness means, like, try it now. Be aware at this moment. Okay? Now, just be aware. Be aware of the air on your face. Be aware of the chair against your body. Be aware of your relation to the floor, what that sensation feels like. Be aware of your sleepiness or alertness. Now, I'm not saying be sleepy, I'm saying be aware of your sleepiness. Be aware of the situation you and I are in at this moment. Be aware of the way in which you and I are evolutionary creatures. Physically, in that we go back and back and back through generations, and we go back and back and back to single-cell organisms and back. And spiritually, that you and I are awarenesses that are at this moment incarnated on this earth in these bodies. Just be aware. Be aware of who you think you are. It's a nice one. Like, say to yourself, I am, and then put something after it. I am Joan or Fred. I am a woman. I am a man. I am old. I am young. I am Mary's husband. I am trying to understand what he's saying. I am spirit. I am a seeker after truth. And realize how everything you put after I am is a limiting condition. And then try on just I am. That's getting you closer to just awareness. I am. Now I'd ask you to look at the word I with your awareness. What is I? Who am I? Buddha talked about the term anatta, no self. He said there are just a set of phenomena existing. The feeling of the air on your skin, your memories of past events, your definitions of who you think you are and how you think the world is. And they're all changing moment by moment by moment by moment. Maybe in the past week you were angry. And in another moment, you were kind and loving. When you were angry, did you even recognize the part of you that was kind and loving? I mean, we are so many, many, many identities. Moving, just continuously moving. That's the concept of I. When you listen to other people, you hear who they think they are. You only hear that when you're not busy thinking you're anybody. Because the minute you think you're somebody, you need everybody else to reassure you that that's true. And so you only hear that which comes from them, which reinforces that which you think is true. In the Tao it says, the truth waits for eyes unclouded by longing. As long as you identify with desire, you only see what your desire allows you to see. If you come into a town in a car and you're hungry, you see what's edible. If you come into a town and you're horny, you see what's makeable. If you come into town and you're tired, you see what's sleepable. If you come into town and you're frightened, you see what's threatening. If you come into town and you're loving, you see what's lovable. As long as you want anything, you only see the projections of your own desires, and that's called karma. Karma is the universe you live in that is the result of previous causes. It is the system of your attachments of mind, your attractions and your aversions. Mine too, of course. So what can we do? The first thing we do, I would assume, is we cultivate awareness. So we're aware of the predicament. And we stop dissembling with ourselves. I mean, one of the big things is how you deal with suffering. I've told this story, I may have told it here in San Diego last time. This woman who told me in a class I was giving in New York that every day she left her apartment to go to work and she passed a man that was begging on the corner of her street with a cup. And it had been going on for 8 months, and she said, I give him a little money now and then she smiled kind of sheepishly and she said, actually I have a budget and I give him $250 a week. And she said, but then as a result of being in this course, she said, I started to become mindful of the situation and I realized that I was afraid. And I thought, what am I afraid of? I'm not afraid he's going to rape me. I'm not afraid he's going to steal my pocketbook. She said, what I was afraid of was I was afraid that if I acknowledged his existence as another person, he'd end up living in my living room. Strangely enough, what she was afraid of was her own heart's compassion. Can you imagine living like that? And yet you and I are. Isn't it bizarre that the mind is afraid of the heart? Because the heart says, take it all. You need it, you use it. And the mind says, now wait a minute. I am charged with keeping you as a separate entity viable. And you have health insurance to pay. It's interesting whether you and I can find a way mindfully, skillfully, to handle the tension between the mind and the heart. without closing the heart in order to protect ourselves. Part of the pathology that the culture leads us into often is the walling off of our own compassionate heart. People say, but if I open my heart, there'll be nothing left for me. That is denying the mind. Because the mind says, look, if you want to do this, you've got to save this and this and this and this. But isn't it possible to have a balance between the mind and the heart? Without closing one off? Isn't it possible to keep your heart open in hell? Isn't it possible to look at the suffering that exists in the world and let your heart break, your emotional heart break again and again and again and again, and still be right here, mindful and aware? And if you're too afraid of that, isn't the price of avoiding what you're afraid of that you turn off life? And that you end up like you've cut yourself off from the very life force that you crave?
What if they're shysters?
Excuse me?
What if they're shysters?
What if they're shysters? If they're shysters, I guess that's their bad karma. Probably. But maybe to protect yourself from being ripped off is costing you more than what you're saving. It's a tricky one. You know?
We're all going to lose it anyway, right? We're all going to lose it anyway.
Well, it's an interesting thing about the relations between the haves and the have-nots. It's primarily the fear the haves have of the have-nots that's exacerbating the problem. And you and I are the haves, of course. And it's our fear that if we didn't have what we have, somehow it would be terrible. We can't quite admit that it's terrible now. You know, I really don't mean to badmouth the culture. I really get off on it. I love it. I mean, I have an MG and a hot tub. I'm not coming on like, you know, I love beauty and I love joy and I love, you know, good food and traveling. I love all that stuff.
It's an aspect we have in Taurus, Aries.
Yeah. I just got an astral definition. I am an Aries. Watch out. Probably. That's karma. It's interesting, if you look at it developmentally, when you and I started out, we weren't busy being anybody. But then we learned to be somebody. Did you notice that? You notice when you started to learn to be somebody? You probably don't remember, because you only remember after you were somebody. Somebody remembers. I love working with nobody. Wavy, my friend Wavy Gravy has been for the last 3 elections running nobody for president. And he's got wonderful lines like, nobody cares. Nobody can solve our economic problems. We started out as nobody, or everybody, or everything, or all of it. And then we learned, you're not all of it, dear. You're just a little tiny bit of it. And don't forget it. We were taught, we were somebody and we were little, and we were at the mercy of big things around us. I mean, storms and cataclysms and mothers and fathers' anger and all kinds of stuff. It was once you became somebody, you were very little and very vulnerable. Before that, you didn't know that, see, before you became somebody. Now, the problem isn't that you became somebody, because in order to be an incarnate, you really got to become somebody. I mean, the people that refuse to become somebody end up as blue babies. They just sort of say, I'm not going to play. Reinforcement schedules don't work. Nothing works. They just drop by to bless us, actually. They're just old karmic entities. So you go into somebody training really early on, and you're being trained by people who think they're somebody. And this is the way it happens, you see. I mean, your parents thought they were somebody. Your teachers think they're somebody. And they see you as somebody. And so you go into somebody training, and you really become somebody, and then you try to become somebody special. That's a major problem, as you can see, because everybody can't be special. Everybody can be unique. But some people, it says in the Bhagavad Gita, it's nice if you're born into a family of yogis. And what it means is you're born into a family of people who don't think they're somebody. I mean, they don't think exclusively that they're somebody. They are, as Christ said, in the world but not of the world. But they're not of anywhere else either. See, there is a way to grow up in an environment of consciousness where you develop the ability to have a somebodyness without getting trapped by it. In other words, you develop a conceptual model to allow you to function as an incarnate without taking it seriously, and without losing your connection to your root source, which is all and everything, which is what you were before you bought into your somethingness, your somebodyness. So if you look at all the spiritual paths, all the religions and all that stuff of the mind, what that is about is to help people that got caught in somebodyness get back to the source, get back to the root unity, the God, the oneness, the behind it all. To wake up from the Maya, the dream, the illusion, not to reject it, not to push it away, but to realize, as the Tibetans say, that samsara and nirvana are one. That you go into the formless in order to come back into the form, so you're both in the form and the formless simultaneously. So you are nobody and somebody. I'm definitely a somebody. Look at me. I mean, don't you see somebody? I'm wearing a brown shirt and brown pants. I'm 60. I mean, that's somebody. People come up and say, Ram Dass, that's somebody. They must mean somebody. Okay. But inside, where am I in relation to it? Where are you in relation to who you are seen as and who you think you are? Behind it all is just... there's just awareness. There's just awareness, and then there's this dance of process going on. It's called Ram Dass. Here he comes, there he goes. There's time passing, there's aging. Wonderful. Look at this hand. Blood vessels and wrinkles and vein, and bones and yum. Look at that. I mean, it's process going on. It's phenomenal. I'm decaying right before my very eyes. From a mindful point of view, I don't give a damn. It's just phenomena. If I climb into this bar, oh my God, I'm aging. Maybe I should get this cream that will porcelana and get rid of these aging spots. Lift it a little here and... Can't be 60 in this culture. It's too bad about him. He was just getting somewhere and he got old. But see, that's because we wiped out elders. I mean, I figure my whole life I've been in elder training. I'm training to be an elder, and and I may have to wear disposable diapers, but I can still be an elder. It depends on what I think I am. And I don't really think I'm anything. I just see the phenomena coming and going. And there's just awareness. And when the awareness looks at suffering, it sees phenomena occurring, which include pain and sadness and self-pity and anger and hurt and dying and starving and AIDS and violence and prejudice and oppression. And it doesn't say, awareness doesn't say, I will look away from that in order to be happy. Because awareness is beyond the polarities of happy and sad. It just is. There's happiness, there's sadness. There's pleasure, there's suffering and pain. Now, as I cultivate that balance, the balance, not just the balance between heart and mind, but the balance between somebodyness and nobodyness, or between form and formless, and learn to live with that tension. The part of me that has no boundaries, that my intuitive heart is the door to, that part of me, your suffering is my suffering. It's our suffering. It's the suffering in the world. It's not even yours or mine. It's the suffering. And the suffering awakens in you the effort to relieve the suffering. If your identity is with all beings and half of it is in a fire, you go to pull it out. And most of us are afraid of that part of our awareness that has to do with the unity of all things because we're afraid of other people's suffering. We're afraid of buying into the stew, for fear we'll drown. And I've got one more balance for you to work with when you try to extend and cultivate the tension to handle polarities. Try the one about suffering. That suffering stinks and suffering is perfect. Wear that one for a while and see how it fits. The laws of the universe are just unfolding just perfectly. They're just unfolding. Haven't you noticed? Even when you're not looking. Physics is happening, psychology is happening, laws are happening. Energy, patterns of energy, the planets are moving. It's all happening lawfully. You think only the planets work lawfully? You don't? You're a happening. You're a lawful set of phenomena unfolding. You think you're somebody making choices, but that's all part of the law too. You don't have a free choice. Don't kid yourself. The only part of you that's free is your awareness, and that doesn't care. Who you think you are isn't free. It's trapped by who it thinks it is. If you look at the patterns of energy, you see the law, and when you look at the law, you are in awe, not of the human-made law, that obviously has a Republican tilt to it at the moment, but I'm talking about the law like the Tao, or the way of things, or the eternal law, or something like that, or the laws of nature, or the laws, and you look at it, and it's so perfect. It is so incredibly perfect. I mean, just look at a tree, even a dead tree. I mean, just look at my hand. Just look. It's all, I mean, it's, the ceiling's staying up. Your little heart muscle's going plop, 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 plop. It's been doing it, even when you weren't noticing it. And if it doesn't do it once, new plane, new movie. It's just doing it, just like that. Isn't that amazing? You can only be in awe of it, and why do you assume, where do you suppose the awe should end? Like I have a cat, and the cat loves me. And the cat brings in lizards to eat. And the tails of the lizards are flapping in the mouth of the cat. Now, shall I hate the cat? Shall I protect the lizard from the cat? What is in the cat's nature? What is in the lizard's nature? How do I know? The cat isn't a vegetarian. I mean, I can try it on wheatgrass, but it just meows. It doesn't buy it. It'll eat simulated chicken glop, and then it'll still go out and get a lizard. I mean, it's not like I can do it, you know. So I look at the ways of humankind. I look at what Buddha said when he said, the people that take incarnation on this plane, which is just a plane, by the way, it's no big deal, it's just another plane. He said they have 5 hindrances, which is part of the karma of why they take incarnation. They have lust and greed, that's 1. Imagine that's just 1. Hatred and ill will, that's 2. Agitation, 3. Sloth and torpor, that's a 4. That's a nice one. And doubt, 5. And that's our profile, that's who we are. You and I, we just have different amounts of each one of those. Some of us are heavy on agitation, some on sloth. You know, it's just, it's no big deal. It's just it's like a Rorschach, you know, it's like a personality inventory. The Buddha test. And within that, just because that's who's on this plane, which could be considered maybe 4th grade or something, I don't know. I don't know where it is in the system. Could be preschool. I mean, I hope it's not graduate school. I just hope it's not graduate school. But wherever this is, suffering is. And that was the Buddha's first noble truth. Isn't it far out? When he got enlightened, and he thought, what'll I do now? And a voice said, I mean, voices are funny in Buddhism, but a voice said, you know, go tell other people. And he remembered that there were 5 other yogis that had been doing a lot of yoga with him that were over at the deer park, and they had rejected him because he gave up all the austerities. So he went back to see them at the deer park, and when he arrived at the deer park, they all said, here comes Gautama, let's ignore him because he isn't a good yogi. But he walked up and light was pouring out of him, you see, and it was disconcerting to the yogis, you know, and so they said, in effect, why is light pouring out of you? And he said, because I got enlightened. And they said, yeah? And he said, yeah, I'll tell you about it. So then he delivered the first sermon in the deer park. And the first thing, he gave what are called the Four Noble Truths. The first one is, interestingly enough, there's suffering. Isn't that a far-out truth? He said there is suffering. Suffering of birth, the suffering of death, the suffering of old age, the suffering of sickness, the suffering of not getting what you want, the suffering of getting what you don't want. And in his later discourses with Ananda, whoever he talked to, he then pointed out you even suffer getting what you want because it's in time and you're going to lose it anyway. I mean, that new car already is junk. It's like the Zen monk who's got this beautiful goblet, and one of his devotees said, "Aren't you concerned? It's such a beautiful crystal." He says, "In my mind, it's already broken." Now, what Buddha went on to do in the next three Noble Truths was to explain why there is suffering. And it's a far-out explanation, because what he said was, the cause of suffering is because the mind clings to this and that, with attractions or aversions. That was his second Noble Truth. I mean, if you are dying, you're only suffering if you're clinging to life. Otherwise, you're just in a phenomena unfolding. Something's happening. You're just going through a process. Hi, I'm dying. Not, oh my God, I'm dying. And his third Noble Truth was, if you break the clinging of mind, you end the suffering. And then his fourth Noble Truth is the Buddha trip. It's the Eightfold Path of how he says you should do it. The clinging, the root clinging, is the clinging to your somebodyness. The clinging to being somebody. The question is, can you not cling and still honor your individuality, your uniqueness? In other words, is there a way of being in a relationship to your thoughts where you do not identify with them? I'm really leaping now, but I hope I'm not pushing you too hard.
Sounds great so far.
Thank you. And the thing about the awareness that you and I were just experimenting with is when you keep coming back into awareness, you get to the point where the awareness is watching the thoughts arise, exist, and pass away, as if you were standing by a riverbank watching thoughts go by, including the thought that you exist. I mean, I'm, whatever else I am, I don't feel like I'm an idiot or psychotic. A few years ago, I spent like 2 months sitting in a room in a Burmese ashram, Buddhist meditation monastery, sitting in a room from 2 in the morning until 10 at night, just following the breath rising and falling in my abdomen. And then every time I'd get tired, at the end of an hour, I'd get up and I'd walk around the cell, following my feet, lift, move, place, lift, move, place. Then I'd finish and I'd sit back down and I'd follow, rising, falling, rising, falling. Now, for who I used to be, that would be grounds for hospitalization. I mean, can you believe that I have a PhD from Stanford and I was a Harvard professor and I'm sitting in a room for 2 months watching the muscle in my abdomen go up and down? That's the way they characterize back wards of mental hospitals. Repetitive behavior. I remember once my father walked in, we had a big farm and a lot of hippies in the 60s dropped by the farm, like a couple of hundred, and every weekend. And once we were in the barn and we were singing Hare Krishna, and it was great, and everybody was high and wonderful. My father came in, he says, "It's a great tune, but you keep repeating it. Don't you have any more melodies?" And as I sat watching my breath, and because what the breath becomes, it could have been anything. It could have been a candle flame or my third eye or a rock or anything. I just picked something, or I picked something out of a tradition that out of all the somethings said, this is a good one to work with. I picked something to become a primary object of focus in order to see all the rest of the thoughts in relation to it. So my commitment was all you got to do is watch your breath. That's the teacher. You go to the teacher, he says, watch the breath rising and falling, the muscle rising and falling. Directly experience what's happening. And once a day you go to an interview. I may have told this story, but you go to an interview and walk in and you bow, and the Sayadaw, the teacher, says, yes, and you say, I've been meditating, following my breath, muscle up and down, and the rising, and then you describe the qualities of the rising. It might be like ants climbing something, who knows, each day it's different. Settling may be like air going out of a tire, or who knows what it's like, or a river flowing or something. And then you report any unique experience. And so you say, last evening when I was meditating, I became aware of the sound of a bird. I mean, when you're sitting all alone in a room with no books and no television and nobody to talk to. And then I heard a sound of a bird. Now what happened is, look, let me just show you technically what happened. For me to hear the bird, my awareness left my breath to go out my ear to hear the bird. Did you ever notice when you're reading something so deeply, somebody can walk in the room and you never even notice them? Because your awareness is going out your eyes, not out your ears. Your auditory canal is working. That's where everything's happening. The vibrations are going in, they're going to your brain, but nobody's home. Because you're looking, you're not listening. So I said, I noted the sound of a bird. I noted it as listening. In other words, I noted that my awareness had gone to listening. And then I brought my awareness back to my breath. And he said to me, did you notice the bird on an in-breath or an out-breath? I didn't notice. Please be very precise, he said. And as I'm excused and I'm leaving the room, he says, by the way, did you awaken this morning on an in-breath or an out-breath? And after you finish climbing the walls and going absolutely stir-crazy with thoughts, I mean, I used to be able to have 7-hour sexual fantasies without, and always looked like I was following my breath, you know. And every now and then I think I'm supposed to be following my breath. Ah, screw it, and I'm going back to the fantasy again. I mean, you're all alone for 2 months in a room, you know. But sooner or later, I mean, the mind, the way they describe the mind in the mystic literature is that it's like a wild monkey, or it's like something very wild that is just agitated and it's just going all the time, and it's like you wake up in the morning and it just starts, you know. Oh, the alarm. I smell coffee. I got to go to the toilet. Oh, the bed's warm. What was I dreaming? Oh, I got to do my laundry. Oh, shit. Oh, I'm still sleeping. Oh, what's that pain in my side? Oh, do I have clean socks? Oh, God. Let's see. What am I going to have for breakfast? God, I better get up. I could say 10 more minutes. It's warm over in that corner of the bed. I mean, and it starts, and it goes all day long. I mean, all day. And all through the night, and then you fall exhausted into bed. And all day long you've been busy thinking, and each thought comes along, think me, think me, think me, think me, think me. I'm real, think me. It's like an orgy of identification with thought. Okay? So you try to say, okay, the Ramakrishna or Vivekananda, one of those two, describes it as a horse and carriage in which the horseman is up on the top leading the horses. And the horseman thinks that the horseman is in charge because all the years nobody's ever bothered to notice that there's somebody inside the carriage. Finally, somebody inside the carriage knocks on the inside window and says, "Would you stop?" The horseman says, "Who the hell are you to tell me to stop? Cogito ergo sum. I think and I am." And the being inside, which is awareness, says, look, you're just thoughts. Cool it. You work for me. Work for you? This is my horse, my carriage. No, I hate to tell you, you were taken over by a multinational. So you sit quietly, and at some point, if you are just disciplined enough, the mind starts to give up its control of your awareness, and your awareness starts to pull back and just rest within itself. And it's just sitting there, and the thoughts are coming and going and arising and existing and falling away, and you're just right here. And then what you realize is that you exist on more than one level of reality. You're a thinking person, and you're also a not thinking person. You're a being person. And you realize that you've been so busy thinking you didn't notice you were being. Thinking has to do with future and past and here and there and all that stuff, time and space, senses. And then when you're doing the breath thing, it gets so that the concentration gets so fine that you develop what's called neighborhood concentration, that your mind holds to the breath, and every time you try to move it away, it goes back to the breath. Now, the breath is a thought, you realize. You just used one thought to get free of all the other thoughts. It's like you get a thorn in your foot, and you find another thorn to pick out the first thorn. Ultimately, you have to throw both thorns away. The game isn't to be able to follow your muscle in your abdomen for the rest of your life. Like the game isn't to be a good meditator. The game is to be free. And the only thing that is free is awareness. And awareness sees suffering, and it sees it as part of the unfolding phenomena. And from that place of awareness, you see the perfection of laws unfolding, including suffering. And what you see from that place, which you also see that within your somebodyness, there is a human, emotional, empathic, empathetic heart that is breaking over the suffering of other people. And your human, emotional heart says suffering stinks, and your awareness says it's perfect. And to attach yourself to either one of those and deny the other is a lie. And it takes incredible guts to look at the universe the way it is and say it's perfect and it stinks. And people, when you say it's perfect, people say, "Perfect? What do you mean it's perfect?" And then there are the perfect people that you say it stinks. They say, "Oh, you're so attached." The tension, all these tensions, that's part of what it means to be human. It means to be aware and also a thinking person. It means to be separate and also one. It means to deal with the tension between the heart and the mind. In which the heart is completely boundarylessness, and the mind sets boundaries in order to protect the separate entity, because the separate entity is part of the perfection as well. Your separateness isn't an error. I used to think that. I was a renunciate because I really thought incarnation was an error. Somebody screwed up. What am I doing among all these brigands and ruffians? You know, I'm much too high for this. And it took me years. It took me after I first turned on in '61 and saw that I wasn't who I thought I was. It took me until the mid-'70s before I realized that I couldn't push away the physical plane and get free. That getting high wasn't the game. The game was to be free, not high. I knew how to get high. I knew how to go into that awareness. I knew how to go into the unitive spaces. It's like we're all one, but then you come back down and you say, but it's my television set. And you live with that, those two things. How do you do that? How do you do that? So Sufis say, trust in Allah, but tie your camel. Now, do you see, if you hear the Buddha's Four Noble Truths, and you understand the nature of suffering, when you suffer, you can say, clinging of mind. I'll meditate. And you'll meditate yourself until you can see that pain is one thing and suffering is something else. Pain is a strong stimulation. Whether you suffer with it is something else. You yourself, you've come home like fatigued, and it's real. And then somebody you love calls you up, and suddenly the fatigue's gone. You shift planes of consciousness. I work with dying people a lot. I mean, I hold them and I'm with them as they're dying. And very often, we get so far out together that nobody's dying in the room. Oh, we're both dying, or bodies are dying, but we're just here. You here? What are you doing today? You dying? Far out. I'm dying too. I'm just not busy doing it all day. Maybe you could die 10 minutes an hour. Isn't it boring to die all day? Oh my God, I'm dying. You said that a minute ago. I'm still dying. We're all still dying. Did you notice? I mean, my God, what is he telling me? See, and you look like, if I suffer because I'm getting old, it's because I'm busy holding on to a model of me as somebody young. I mean, when you can't walk anymore and you get deaf and blind, it's a good time to meditate. Okay? See, so you can take, and the question is aging just telling you something that you refuse to hear because you want to keep playing croquet or something? Aging isn't an error. It's far out. Like, autumn is an error. You really screwed up making people get old. If I was running things, you may be, and then you'll see. You are, and look what you've done. You don't even know why people get old, and you're already busy putting it down. So do you see the peculiar situation you're in? That when you see somebody else suffering, their suffering to them is real, while your suffering to you is only relatively real. And you can see that you can work with your own suffering, but you don't go to somebody else and say, well, work on it. Somebody comes up and says, I'm starving. Good. Must be great yoga. Okay. And you find yourself living with that paradox that you know the level at which, because I got to say one preface thing, that this funny line, suffering is grace. You can get far enough out so that you see the way in which what suffering is awakening to you to is where your mind is clinging. Do you want to get free? Well, if you want to get free, when you're suffering, it'll show you that you're holding on. And if you go in along the route of that suffering, you'll find out where you're clinging and you can let go. And then you'll just have pain or loss or whatever. Yeah, just. And it'll be horrible, and it'll be beautiful, and it'll be everything. It'll be the agony and the ecstasy of it all. For yourself, it is possible to be a free being that sees the universe as it is, and therefore whose actions reflect that which, what would I say, brings things into balance or harmony. Your acts would be that which brings balance. Yeah. The paradox, just to make sure you got that one clear, because I'm working with that all the time now to try to understand it, is I do everything I can to relieve other people's suffering. If you say your pain is suffering for you, I will do my best to take your pain away. But one of the things that I may do in the process of doing that is I may, with my own mind, be in a place where that is just pain and not suffering. And I can be an environment for your mind where, if you're ready, you could get free of suffering just the way I'm getting free of suffering. See, it's interesting, when you give somebody food when they're hungry, there are ways of doing that so you increase the distance between people, and there are other ways of doing it so it brings people together in love. If you're busy being the giver, your mind forces the other person to get caught in receiver-ness, unless they're very high. If you're not caught in giver-ness, even though you're giving, you're in an environment where they don't have to get caught in receiver-ness, even though they're receiving. Do you hear that in relation to somebody-ness and nobody-ness? Am I pushing? I feel I'm pushing everybody's. But what the hell? You can get up and walk out. Yeah. What'd you say? That is spiritual healing, yes. That is healing. When Gandhi was asked to give a message for a reporter to take back to his people, he wrote on a paper bag, because the train was moving out of the station, and he handed it out, and it said, "My life is my message." And that's true for you too, and me too. That if you're, like when I work with people that are dying, what's on the line is my own fear of death or non-fear of death. That's what I'm offering. How many people are nurses and doctors that are absolutely petrified of death and have never examined that in themselves and are busy saying, don't worry, it's all going to be all right. And they're like Typhoid Mary. Whatever they're saying, they're transmitting at the same moment the fear. It's in their body language. It's in the tone of the voice. It's in everything. I'll share with you a really far out one I've just been through. I was helping a woman to die who she had AIDS. She was 42. She was an incredibly dynamic, wonderful woman, very caring woman, very involved in a lot of international social affairs of service in different parts of the world. She was in, I think, Costa Rica or somewhere, and she made love to somebody over the weekend, a doctor, and then he died of AIDS, and then she was dying of AIDS. And she came to me and she said, "Ramdas," she called up and said, "Could I come see you?" And she said, I came to see you because I'm getting worse, my blood count's going down, I'm having all these symptoms, and I probably am going to die of this now, and I'd like to work on my consciousness. She said, I'd like you to help me. So we started to work, and it was extraordinary. She was such an apt student. Pretty soon she was just floating out there. I mean, she'd come in, and you'd come in, and she was in the hospital, and she was looking like she was about to drop any second, and she'd wink at me. I mean, she was so light and so present and so clear and so full of her feelings and honoring the feelings and a lot of the crying and the sadness and the joy and the saying goodbyes and the whole business. And she and I formed a bond of presence together where we were just right here together. One of the asides of that was that in order to meet a person in shared awareness behind the drama of dying and separateness, it means you come into a place of oneness with that other person, which literally means you fall into love. And it's very interesting when you're working with dying people to keep falling in love with people who die, because you get a chance to see where your attachments are and whether you can be in love with somebody without clinging. Can you love somebody in the transformation and allow the transformation to occur without grabbing at the form you found sweet? Is love deeper than that? And that's the work I do on myself. So she and I had agreed that we would try to keep her as conscious as possible through her death. So she and the doctor and I all planned her morphine drip and how much morphine and this and that and all the stuff so that she could stay as conscious as possible. And the drama went on for some weeks at the hospital level. And finally, I came in one day, and what had happened was she had a catheter into an artery into her lung, and it had candida had developed, and it had formed a clot at the end of the insert, and it had broken off and gone into the artery into her heart, and she was coughing, and she couldn't stop coughing and choking and coughing and choking and coughing. And it went on and on and on and on. And I sat with her for hours, watching her choke and cough. When I looked in her eyes were just present, even though she was choking and coughing. And the doctor came in, and he said, I could give her something that would stop that choking and coughing. It would put her out. And I noticed that I didn't say anything. I mean, I just want you to hear the situation. That I had said to her I would help her stay as conscious as possible. She wasn't complaining about the choking and coughing, but I couldn't stand it because I had gotten attached to her and I wanted to take away her pain. And so I didn't say anything. The doctor gave her it, she went out, and she died. Now, I'm not bad and I'm not good. I mean, I'm not at that level. I'm just noticing it. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? As you and I realize the nature of suffering, and we are able to pull our awareness back and just see how things are, and see the dysfunctional situation we find ourselves in, and see the way time works and space works, as you just quiet down and appreciate all that, your actions start, like judo, start to reflect that which is the optimum thing you can do to bring about a healing or a harmony, or bring things back into balance. You become an instrument of that. Gandhi said, when you surrender completely into God, you find yourself, which is the only truth worth having, you find yourself in the service of all that exists. It becomes your joy and recreation. And it's interesting because when I work in Guatemala or in Nepal or with AIDS people or with whoever, with neurotics or me, with myself, with all of it, I feel so graced because that part of me that's one with all things is relieving our suffering. And I'm not doing it for the Guatemalans or the Nepalese. I'm doing it because I'm doing it, because it's the part I play, because that's what I am. And it's not good. Isn't he good? I mean, I took care of Dad until he died, or I didn't take care of him. Ken took care of him. I created an environment where Ken could take care of him. Made Dad feel safe. And I did that at first. I milked it. People would say, aren't you good to be taking care of your father? I'd say, well, somebody has to do it. And then later on, I just did it because I did it, because I did it, because I did it. And then I really felt what it felt like to be part of a family and be taking care of my father. And I felt grace to be around my father in those days. What you and I do when we see our predicament with clear eyes and don't turn away from what is, we find a place in ourself that is peaceful. And from that peacefulness, we can bring peace into the world. We find a place in ourself that is quite joyful at the beauty and awe of the mystery. And when we rest in that, we bring joy into the world. We find a place in ourselves that is free of suffering. And when we are that, we are an environment in which other people, if they are ready, can become also free of suffering. By being, it's like fertilizer. You learn morally you have no right to take away another person's suffering unless they want to get rid of it. An interesting aside. I'm just going to talk a couple of more minutes and then we'll, I don't know what, something else. What I've been spending my past few years, more of the past years trying to understand, like why I'm called Ramdas, which means servant of God, which means is a name for Hanuman the monkey. I just did these tapes of the Ramayana, beautiful, beautiful epic poetry that you can, I think they're now available. They're wonderful. It's a great, great story. But I'm of a lineage of service. And that's what's known as karma yoga. It's the path of coming back into the balance with the oneness through service. And what I've been trying to understand is that path, because I think it's uniquely suited for us in the West at this moment. Because we do what we do, which is our dharma. We do our, if you're a mother, you mother. If you're, whatever you do it. But you do it from a different vantage point than is if you would just live in life. You do it also as a vehicle to awaken. See, I know that I'm not, as I said at the beginning, I'm not enlightened. I'm still attached. My mind still grabs at things. Because of that, I realize that every time I attempt to relieve somebody's suffering, at some level I am contributing to their suffering. But yet, I can't wait till I'm enlightened to help people. Because I learned that's not going to work. Because that may be many, many thousands of lifetimes down the path. So what I'm doing is I am working to relieve people's suffering as an exercise to work on myself, because the freer I get, the more my act to relieve suffering really relieves suffering. You see the circle? I help you to work on myself, I work on myself to help you. And we both get helped. until finally there are no actors. There's no giver, there's no receiver, there's just presence. And it's like when you hand something from your left hand to your right hand doesn't say thanks. Right? It's the same thing. I mean, you put food in your mouth, the mouth says, well, it's about time.
Those times when those topics joints are going to hurt your incarnation.
Excuse me?
Those times when those topic joints are not going to help your further incarnation.
The
In San Francisco, walk into those topless joints.
the topless joints and
Further incarnation would be better.
Oh, I'll have many more incarnations at that level. Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, dear. Dear. You see the 5 hindrances right before your very eyes.